Good morning and welcome to Motivational Mornings, the podcast that gets you going before you get going.
Good morning and welcome to Motivational Mornings. My name is Ryan and I'm here with my co-host Vivi, and today we're going to discuss the book Measure What Matters by John Doerr. So this book is all about OKRs, and OKRs are objectives and key results. By objectives, we mean what do we want to achieve? And the key result would be, how are we going to do that? So maybe a very simple example of an objective is I want to get an A in my math class. The key results would be, okay, I'm going to study 3 times a week. I'm going to show up for every single class. And I don't know, I'm going to go to bed by 9 p.m. so I'm fresh for class. And if you achieve those key results, in theory, you would then achieve the objective. So that's essentially what an OKR is, a brief summary of that, and what the book is about. Some of the many benefits of these OKRs are you become more focused on your objectives, you become more committed, you become better aligned, especially when you're working as a group to achieve these objectives. You're better at tracking your objectives or your goals, and you're also better at setting more harder reaching or stretch objectives or goals. So I want to dive into the concept of stretching. And so stretch goals or stretch objectives are big, daunting goals. These are the goals that are, you get a little scared. They're a little intimidating, like just climbing a big mountain. So studies have shown that people with harder goals, they're less likely to meet their goals. I mean, that makes sense. The harder they are, the harder they will be to achieve. But the harder the goal is, these studies have also shown that the higher level of performance people achieve. So even though they're not reaching their stretch goals, they're performing at a higher level. Google, for example, they have an average stretch goal failure rate of 40%. So a lot of these goals they're not making, but I'm sure the performance at Google is extremely high with all the products they've been able to create. And I think a good quote that sums this up is from Larry Page from Google. And he says, if you set a crazy, ambitious goal and miss it, you'll still achieve something remarkable. When you aim for the stars, you may come up short, but still you can reach the moon. So on top of all that, not only do you become more productive when you have these stretch goals, but studies have shown people are also more motivated and engaged. So I want to dive into an example that the book gives, and staying with the Google theme, it's an example of when Google created Gmail. Pre-Gmail, email systems had usually 2 to 4 megabytes of room. So essentially not much. This means that you had to constantly delete your emails. You didn't have enough room to save them. There's no archiving. So Google wanted to come out and create a better product. And Google had a goal to create Gmail and to initially release it with 100 megabytes. So a lot more than the 2 to 4. This was a stretch goal, a stretch objective that they created. This 100 megabytes is 50 times larger, remember, than the current competition of 2 megabytes. But by the time Gmail released to the public in 2004, Gmail was released with 1 gigabyte of space. So that means it released being 500 times larger than the competition. Obviously, with such a drastic change, this changed the way people would use email. Is now you could save emails, you could archive emails, you can reference back to previous emails. And so Google calls this stretch philosophy the 10x, or continually trying to improve something 10 times its current state. The book also uses the creation of Google Chrome as a stretch example. So Google Chrome is a web browser. I'm sure many of you guys use it. When Google was first creating Google Chrome from scratch, they had a stretch goal of going from zero weekly users to 20 million weekly active users. And by the end of the year, did they reach that goal? No, they ended up failing that goal. They were short. I don't think they were that close. But the following year, they set another stretch goal for 50 million active weekly users. So first year, they failed. Doesn't matter. They set a stretch goal for even higher, more than double that. By the end of the next year, they reached 38 million users. So they still failed their stretch goal of 50, but in 2 years, they went from 0 million weekly users to 38, beating their goal from the first year. That's a considerable progress. Finally, the third year, they set a goal of 111 million users. Again, more than double. And by the end of the third year, this time they reached it. So I found the story really interesting because it's a great use of stretch goals. For the first 2 years, they failed their stretch goals, their stretch objectives. But they still gained progress. Just like the studies showed, performance is still elevated. And then by the third year, even though they kept stretching their goal further, they were actually able to achieve it. And now, today, after all those stretch goals, there's more than 1 billion weekly users for Chrome. So wildly successful. But it all started with these stretch goals.
I just want to take a minute, Ryan, and just reinforce all these gold tidbits that you're leaving out for all the audience. So I want to clarify again, and for everyone that maybe isn't aware of the difference between objectives and key results. So objectives are like what, and key result is how you get there. So I'm sure a lot of you guys have heard in the past, we've talked a lot about goals, how to set goals, measurable goals, attainable goals, and moving closer towards those goals with actionable daily actions. However, we want to make sure that objectives are always seen as the long term, whereas the key results are the stepping stones that are immediately actionable and that get you towards your objective for the year, for the quarter, or however often you may set it. We've talked about this very similar before in the past of having goals and moving towards or away from them, just as how if you're looking towards a mountain, going towards the mountain will be walking towards your goal, and walking away from the mountain will be walking away from your goal. And I do very agree on the simplest standpoint that OKRs are a measuring tool. Now, to further go into what Ryan is talking about, OKRs, there's two types, committed and aspirational OKRs. Now, committed OKRs are goals that are agreed upon that we will achieve, that will happen. The expected result of a committed OKR is 100%. You could call it 1.0. An aspirational OKR, however, like Ryan was saying, are things how we'd like the world to look in the ideal standpoint, in the ideal world. Now, the expected score for an aspirational OKR is 70% or 0.7. So committed are 100% and aspirational are 70%, because you can never fully attain how you would love the world to look. Now, that's exactly what Ryan was saying about the stretch capabilities of one organization. Aspirational goals are the stretch capability. We want to have these so far out that you're always chasing what can be possible. And just to summarize everything in the most simplest ways, OKRs really only provide 4 key values. They focus the organization on what actually matters. They allow us to measure our progress towards these goals. They enable large groups of people to work together in alignment, so go in the same direction. And lastly, they allow us to stretch to achieve things that we wouldn't have thought was actually possible. So those are like the 4 reasons why any organization, from a small grassroots ice cream shop all the way to like a Fortune 500 company, should have some sort of OKRs.
Now I want to talk about tracking your OKRs. OKRs are useful because they better help track your achievements. And remember, we discussed that making progress towards a goal has been shown to be motivating. OKRs force you to track this progress, which in turn lets you benefit from this motivation effect. And so the book recommends weekly check-ins to ensure that you're on pace and still making progress for your OKRs. And I just want to note that studies have shown even just writing down your goals to begin with increases your chances of achieving it. You can even increase your odds further by monitoring this progress, by tracking, or by sharing the goal with someone else, such as a colleague. OKRs are supposed to be dynamic. This is another reason why we track them. Having these weekly check-ins allow us to evaluate the goals and do different things, such as we can say we want to continue the goal. So if the goal's going well, the objective's going well, we wouldn't change anything. We would just stay on course until we complete it. But what if it's not going as well? Well, these weekly check-ins allow us to update the goal, update the objective, and then we can tweak it a bit so we can get back on track. Maybe we discovered something new and realized maybe we need a new goal, a new OKR, and we can add one mid-cycle. If we're only evaluating our goals once a year, it's really tough to add something in the middle. Or if it's maybe the OKR is no longer useful, maybe we've pivoted, we're going a different direction now. Well, then there's no point doing something that's not serving a useful purpose. So we can stop the OKR, we can cross it off, get rid of it. That's totally fine too. So having these weekly check-ins allow us to, one, track to make sure we're on progress, but two, also be dynamic and update, change, stop, start our OKRs or our goals to ensure that we're always being the most efficient in what we're doing. You can track OKRs. So the book gives a few recommendations. Right now, there's a lot of software out there that's really useful. Maybe if you don't have access to software, you could also use Excel or something if you're very comfortable with that. But the good thing with the software is that it's very visual. And so, for example, you could color code things. So maybe when you do your weekly check-ins, you color code an OKR green if it's something you want to continue, yellow if it's something you want to update, and red if it's something that you want to stop immediately, that's no longer useful. And when you color code it or have something this visual, once you start having multiple tracking sections over the weeks or the months or the years, it's a lot easier for you to see what you should be doing, what you should be stopping, and what you should be changing. Now, that wraps up today's episode of Motivational Mornings. Thanks for listening, guys. Remember, if you want to check out this book, feel free to get a free trial at Audible if you go to audibletrial.com/motivational mornings, and it will give you a free 30-day trial, and you can choose any audiobook of your choice, including Measuring What Matters by John Doerr, if you want to take a more in-depth look of this book. And then it'll ask for your credit card, but if you don't like the trial, feel free to cancel within 30 days. All right, guys, thanks again for listening to today's episode. Have a great day.